So good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brooke Clunchy, and I have the privilege of serving as the interim superintendent for the Nauset Public Schools. And it is my absolute pleasure tonight to call this particular meeting together of the Wellfleet School Committee. And at this point in time, it is a reorganization meeting. And so I'm more than happy to take nominations for chairman of the Wellfleet School Committee. Are there any nominations? Jill?
Yes, please. I nominate Betsy as chair, please.
Great, thank you so much. And Betsy, would you accept that nomination?
I'm not going to accept it. In turn, I would like to nominate Martha Gordon.
Okay, terrific, thank you. And Martha, would you accept the nomination?
I will, yes.
Great, thank you. And do we have a second for that nomination? Laura?
Yes.
Great,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've got screaming kids in the background, so I'll be muted.
We have all been there and done it. We get it. So with that, then Martha, we have a first and a second nomination. For Martha, are there any other nominations to come to the table tonight? Seeing no hands at this point in time, then I would take a roll call vote. Arlene, would you be able to just keep track, please, of the votes?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. So this is for the position of chairman of the Wellfleet School Committee. And with that, I'll just go across the screen and do the roll call. So Betsy?
Betsy Pontes, yes.
Thank you. Jill?
Yes.
Thank you. Martha?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Thank you. Liberty?
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa?
That's it.
Lisa's not a board member.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I didn't realize that. And what
I
about
think you're
Rebecca?
all set. That's it, right?
We're all set?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's it. Then Martha, with that, congratulations. We're glad to have you on as the new chairperson of the Wellfleet School Committee. And I will turn the meeting happily over to you.
Thank you. And I will accept it, I think, happily. And at this point, I would like to take nominations for the position of vice chair. And Jill?
Before we start, I have a question for Betsy. Would you accept vice chair?
Yes,
Then
I
I
would.
nominate Betsy.
I second. Oh, that's me. I forgot. I was waiting for Betsy to say something. We have a nomination and a second, and I will go across my screen. So Betsy?
Betsy Pontes, yes.
And Jill?
Yes.
And Laura? Up. And Liberty? Liberty is muted. I will vote yes.
Sorry, yes.
Good, okay, so it's unanimous and we are ready to move on, and we have, we do elections for secretary? Or do we just make Arlen do it every year? Okay, Arlen, congratulations. And the warrant authorizer, I will take nominations for that.
I'm happy to continue with that.
Great. Do we have to vote on that or?
No, Arlen's saying no.
Okay.
I think we just sort of assign now.
Assign it.
Okay. And I'm happy to continue to be your alternate. I don't think I was ever called on to do it, but
Yes,
I
you
will
were.
be
but
happy
I'm-
to do it.
You did do it
Oh, at the
twice
beginning.
last summer.
I did. You're right. And then we need to look at subcommittees. Betsy, are you willing to continue on the policy subcommittee?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And the central office budget, who did that? I believe it was probably
Dan.
Jan, I'm guessing. Is there anybody on the board who would like to sit on
Just a
that?
question.
Yeah,
For our new member, and also it's just really informative if we can give a very brief description of the positions that are open, so people have an understanding about how much of a commitment it is, and exactly, or not exactly, but what it entails.
okay, sure. And should we do that for everything or just for the ones that are not being taken again? For example,
My
policy.
guess is it's informative for people anyway, even those of us who are happy to continue in the roles we've already been doing. It's
Sure.
probably quite informative for us to give a very brief description of what this is all about as well, because a lot of these things are just so every once in a while. And also somebody might have a passion or an interest in a particular subject as well. So,
Okay.
yep.
Good plan. Betsy, would you like to give a very brief summary of the policy committee? And
Sure. So the policy committee meets as frequently as needed and reviews either current policy manuals that need updates or reviews new policies that usually come from the state to be included in our policy manual. And then we bring them to the committee for first read, which is then where we get input from the committee. And then after that, we generally vote at the joint meeting. So it can be more meetings during certain times. Right now, we do have quite a bit going on, and that's why I thought I would just continue in it, because a lot of it has been sort of happening for a while. So I'm happy to continue with that.
okay, and Mary Beth, I'm wondering if you could tell us what the central office budget person does, or if there's anybody else on the board, Jill or Betsy, if either of you know.
I'm not sure exactly. Arlen?
Are you speaking about
She
Giovanna?
knows.
Giovanna could speak to that, yeah.
Yeah, I think Giovanna would be
Share.
the best person to speak.
I can share the knowledge on central office budget. Typically, we meet twice. I prepare all of the information for the subcommittee to review ahead of time before we meet. And we have two meetings, an hour in duration. We talk about all the expenses that are shared across the region. All of the central office staff salaries and any applicable expenses that are part of the central office. It's very informative. We give you all the information. It's an easy meeting. Everything's already prepped for you. There's really, the chair, Gail Breyer, has been the chair for the last couple of years, and she does a great job in running the meeting and getting questions to us ahead of time so that everyone's well informed.
So Martha, if I may,
Yes,
I was thinking about leaving the PTA liaison post, and I would be willing to take on central office budget unless anyone else has a dire wish to do so.
anybody? Everybody okay with that? Nod your heads.
Okay, great.
Great, thanks, Betsy. And negotiations. Negotiations is comes up every time there's a union contract that needs to be negotiated. It can be very time consuming. Mort did it for us for many, many years. And he actually finished out this year's negotiations, although he was no longer on the school committee because he was in the middle when we ended our term last year. It's busier on the years that we have new contracts. And I'm guessing, Lee, you would know this. Is it every 3 years? Lee? Anybody? I think it is every 3
Yes.
years. Yeah.
Although they negotiated a 1- and a 3-year contract this time.
Yeah.
Negotiations would not start until 2023, I believe, unless there's something that comes up in between now and then that has to be, the contract is open. But yeah, it's going to be a couple of years at least before we need to start negotiating again.
Okay, so is there anybody on the board who would like to take that over at this point? Oh, you're all so shy. Well, yes, Brooke?
One of the things you could think about is just waiting until it comes open and then appoint someone at that point in time. You could do that too if you didn't want to put someone, because Lee's absolutely right. Right now, you've just completed the next 3-year contract, so you really don't need someone on it right at this second. And if something was to come up where you would have to open it, then we could come to you and say, we need a representative now. So you could wait. It's just an option for you.
Does that feel good? And then maybe some of our newer members would feel more comfortable doing it at that point. You'll be older members by then. Well, not older
Seasoned.
like us, but older, more experienced. Okay, so if it's okay with everybody, we'll just hold off on that. And transportation is a committee that I think Laura's on now. Sometimes there have been times when it's been very, very busy, but since we've had we changed bus companies about 3 years ago, and we went from a private company to using the collaborative. And since then, there's been very, very little for the transportation committee to do. Laura, I don't even know if you all met this year at all. You may meet to go over bus routes in the summer. Sometimes that happens.
I have not met at all. I'd be happy to do it again.
Okay. You're hired. And okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do. Is there a contact point that I should be contacting somebody about that?
That's a good question. Arlen, do you normally get in touch with people on committees? Laura was on a couple, and actually 3, and I think you were 3. And she did not get called for any meetings at all in the past year.
So the only meetings I've personally called were the policy subcommittee meetings. I think Gio would know more about transportation if they were going to need to meet at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, if we do have meetings, you'll get an invite from my secretary. But last year we didn't meet. We may reconvene to discuss seat belts. That was one of the open items, but we just did not have a meeting last year.
Okay. And then that brings us to health and wellness, which is also one of your committees. And I don't know who calls those meetings either.
I never got called for that either.
I never got caught. Brooke?
I would think that would be coming out of central office, and I am willing to bet, Laura, although you may not have had a meeting last year, I'm willing to bet you may have a meeting this year, quite honestly. And we would probably generate that out of central office. Arlene, correct me if I'm wrong. And I think especially with having the nurse leader position potentially coming into the district, I know that I certainly have a vision of what that looks like. So you may be a little bit more active this year. So heads up.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The substance abuse task force is the behavioral health task force now. We went through a few name changes, and that's the last, I hope the last one, for a number of reasons. I've been sitting on that committee since its inception. I'm happy to do it again. However, if there is anybody who's dying to do it, let us know. Okay, can you all hear me? I just got a note that I'm unstable.
No, we can hear you. Do you want
Not
to?
me, the
Subcommittee?
connection. You can't hear me. Uh-oh.
Yes, we
can.
can. Yes, we can. We can hear you.
I hear you fine.
You cannot?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
We
good.
can.
Thank you for nodding.
We can.
Okay. I can see you, I can hear you. Okay, so I'm happy to do that unless there's somebody who is very, really would love to. I'm happy to give it up. And there are other committees on here, but let's go through the committee representatives that we have so far. And one is the Cape Cod Collaborative, and that is usually Jill. Jill, would you like to speak about that?
It's always me. Typically, it is meeting in the Hyannis area once a month. The collaborative is a collaborative of all these different school committees. Each school committee has a representative. There's 19 in the district, including Wareham. And the collaborative really does exist for the needs of all the different members. So in other words, even though the collaborative began as a special needs collaborative, answering the needs of children who were too challenged to be integrated into various classrooms in their regular community public schools, it morphed into certainly meeting the needs of children and teachers, professional development. But as Martha brought up, there was the need to have transportation that wasn't so inflated in price. So it was brought up to the collaborative about meeting the needs even for transportation. So being a nonprofit as opposed to just one bidder for transportation, it worked out. So again, the collaborative really exists for the needs of the school committees. So I've been doing it for years. I also have, I'm still currently licensed, recertified every 5 years in special needs. I've always felt like it's a really good match for me. So I'm very happy to continue.
Okay, great. And we're very happy to have you continue. So that's great. Thank you, Jill. So we have two more, and one is the PTA liaison, which is, you would attend PTA meetings as our spokesperson, and also come back and report to us on what the PTA is thinking of doing. Betsy served on that for a long time, but is now happy to give it up. So
It's hard for me to get to the meetings because my work day and the West school day are very different. So I wouldn't really be able to get there.
Understandable. So would anyone do that?
Martha, I knew any of the ones that you guys have a need for, just, knowing that I'm brand new at this and have zero experience. But if you have, something that you need, or you need somebody to step in for something, I'll do any of the ones that have a need to be filled.
Okay.
If I
And
could
also, if there are
Martha?
things that are interesting, to you too.
I think timing, if I could, Martha, is helpful to know also before people commit to. So for the PTA liaison, PTA meetings are typically held after school committee meetings. So that's one
at night.
At night. And then Liberty, I think you're teaching, just so you know,
Yeah.
the school council, which is the next one, that usually takes place at 2:15. So
Okay,
right
yeah, I
after
couldn't do that either.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Beth. I completely
Sure.
forgot they met afterwards. Weren't they fluctuating and doing
A couple of years ago, they did. They
and
were
one
trying
late?
to do
Okay, I guess I
after
was
school.
remembering that when I said I couldn't make it because obviously I would.
So Liberty, may I put you down for that?
So it meets after this one at night?
Yes.
So it's in person, or do you guys know?
It was. We didn't have any meetings last year because of COVID.
But it might be, yeah, I can do that one if it's after this one, especially if it's on the same day. I can plan for it, sure.
I think that's a good point, with the time efficiencies, that it's clustered right after.
Yep.
And the last one in terms of committee representatives is a school council liaison. I've done that for a long time. I'm happy to turn it over to somebody else, but I know the timing of it is difficult and I am on paper retired. So I can probably keep it up, but I'm more than happy, although I'll miss it. It's kind of it's pleasant. We meet once a month, but not even every month. We often don't meet when there's a school vacation week, and we get to really think about what direction the school is going in, where we sort of help Mary Beth. She does most of it herself anyway, but we pretend to help Mary Beth figure out how to implement the strategic plan. Actually, she does it all by herself and then she sends it to us and we read it. And we talk about it. It's quite pleasant. It's usually a 1-hour meeting, almost once a month. We don't meet in the summer. But the schedule's hard for most of you, I think, because of either work or children and that kind of thing. So would anyone like to do it? Okay, I'll do it till your kids grow up a little more. Okay. All right. And there are some other committees. There's one that I know of, and it's a mystery. I don't know if it ever got off the ground. And that is, I don't even know what the official name of it is, but it's the Anti-Racism Committee. And that's another one that Laura was on that apparently didn't meet during COVID. And I'm just going to write it down here because I think it's important. I'm putting it under subcommittees because I think it needs to happen. I know it needs to happen, so I'm sure it will. And Laura, do you want to? Yes, Brooke. Sorry.
Thank you. And I know Robin's on this call as well, or on this meeting, but yes, we have every intention of beginning some work on that. So I think it would be wise to have somebody that's queued up and ready to help.
Okay. Laura, would you be happy remaining on that? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And I believe those are open meetings. So if anybody else wants to come to that meeting, Liberty, I'm imagining that that's something that's pretty important to you too.
Yes, I would do that one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can
Then
I just interrupt Martha for 1 second?
yes.
Just looking back in my notes about the anti-racism, we had a racial equity discussion a few meetings back. And at that point, it was determined that we were waiting for Brooke actually to come and there was going to be a task force. So I think.
Great. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I
All
remembered
right.
we had.
We have to then choose Union 54 voting members. Union 54 is, oh God, it took me so many years to figure this out, but because the elementary schools have more members as a group, there are 20 of us on the elementary school committees as a group, and only 10 on the regional. We are only, there are certain votes that we do not want to overpower the regional school committees. So we have what is called Union 54, and that means 3 members of every elementary school committee vote on some of these issues. So we need 3 voting members. I guess as chair, I'm supposed to be 1, and I thought vice chair was supposed to be 1, but it doesn't say that. Do you know, Betsy?
I don't know.
Okay. Would you like to stay on it? You have been on it.
Sure.
Okay. And Jill, I believe you were the third member?
Yes, and I'm very happy to stay on.
Okay. Sometimes one or the other of us can't get there. And that means that Laura and Liberty are alternates for that. Okay. Thank you. And we're done with that. So let's move on to the agenda. Oh, there's a dog in here. Thank you. The dog is gone. And do we have any citizens who would like to speak at this point? Seeing none, I am going to move on to administrators' reports. And yes, Jill.
Do we have members speak before that?
Well, we can. Yeah, I don't see it here. I'm just, trust me, I am reading a script.
Right. But if with permission, I'd like to interject, since typically we do have members speak.
Please, let's have members speak.
All right.
You're a citizen, so you can speak anyway.
Okay, 3 things briefly. I want to welcome Brooke, and I'm so excited about Liberty. Thank you for serving. Thank you for stepping up to the plate. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to meet you all. And I just wonder whether maybe next meeting or maybe this meeting for us to introduce ourselves and tell something very brief about ourselves, like background and what we do, and or to get to know each other a little better, or maybe put that on the agenda for next time so people are prepared to say a few sentences about themselves. So I'll bring that up. Looking at people's faces and whatnot, maybe we put that on the next agenda to introduce ourselves. So my third thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is more directed towards Arlen, at our last meeting, we wanted to save money for the mass conference. Did we put in, because July 15th is the deadline, to save money?
We did, yes.
Yay!
Yes.
Well done, Arlen, with all the transitions and everything. I just want to make sure we saved those hundreds of dollars.
We did.
Yay, good, thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say? Laura?
Well, I guess on the mask thing that Joe was just talking about, is that something that we register for? I mean, because that's July 15th, the date. That's in 2 days. Is that?
So I've registered 2 members from each committee, 4 from the region. So
Okay.
as the chair and vice chair, you all can decide who goes when you get closer to the time.
Okay.
Split days, I think that's what Tom had mentioned, that you can go different days to different events. So
Maybe that can also be on the agenda for September. That makes sense.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. So for those who don't know, the meeting it's a conference, the beginning of November. Typically there's 3 days offerings for superintendents and school committee members of all kinds of diverse topics. And definitely we can decide who goes and when, and we all can have an opportunity to go, split up the 2 things. And we do vote on a delegate. I know, Laura, you enjoyed it so much last time, but there's resolutions that are to be discussed and voted on. And I think it's a Saturday of that first week in November, but again, as we get closer, but that's just another piece of that conference, going over resolutions. And as a school committee, probably in our October agenda, we would put to discuss amongst ourselves how we feel about the resolution, so the delegate has a clue how to represent the committee.
Thank you, Jill. Okay. And I do have one other question that just left me. Yes, one of the times we tried to meet, we had an issue not getting on. It was, I think, in the spring, maybe early spring, we had difficulty meeting. And I wondered if it made sense for us. Do we have somebody who can co-host? It can be the chair or maybe Arlen, but somehow to make sure that if there's any mix up, we are still online when we're supposed to be. Arlen?
I'm happy to do that if you'd like me to co-host the meetings with Rebecca. So Rebecca can set me up that way.
That
Yeah,
would be great. Yes.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. And now to administrators' reports, and that's to you, Mary Beth.
Thank you. I have some additions to the report that I sent a couple weeks ago. And the first is that we're still trying to find a custodian to work. I had reached out, talked to school council, the council on aging, the high school principal to see if maybe we could get a high school or a college kiddo who might want to work the summer. But I haven't received any applications. So just putting it out there, if anybody should know of anyone that might be interested, to please send them my way. Also, we are planning on reopening our after-school childcare program. The town did approve our operating budget, which does include that free after-school childcare. And since it was so popular when we had it, we had quite a waiting list. And so we decided that we would give grade level priority as we reopen it. So for example, students in K1 and 2 have to be met by a parent or a designee after dismissal. So they can't just come off the bus by themselves and go home. So we're going to make the priority to kindergarten kiddos first grade after that, second, and continue on its way. And of course, enrollment priority is also given to working parents. So we will be opening, we're sending home the first initial letter to parents on Thursday. That will explain the whole process and how to register. Next Thursday, we'll send a reminder, which is a flyer because the enrollment opens on August 2nd. And lastly, we did hire a new after-school childcare site coordinator, and his name is Andy Haven. Some people might know him because he's working part-time for the Wellfleet Rec Department this summer. And he has quite an extensive training and background. He has a master's degree in sports management and business. He was living and working in Florida. He served as athletics coordinator in Doral, Florida, Doral, and he also owned Highland Sports and Recreation in Miami Shores. So not only is he working for Wellfleet Rec, he's also working part-time as a case manager and vocational counselor at the Latham Centers. So we're happy to have him. And Shelley Matus will continue working for Ask. She has moved up to become the lead provider. So I'm still in need of a program aide. So if you know of anybody who'd be interested in working after school until 5:30, send them my way.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. And now we have Brooks.
Great,
Report.
thank you. Thank you so
Very
much.
first ever.
I know.
Welcome. Let me say welcome to you. It's so good to see you not in an interview.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It has been a wonderful start. Oh my goodness, it's just been awesome. It really has been. And I just want to kind of go over a couple of things here. I know that I've got the 90-day entry plan, and I'm just going to refer to it. And I think going forward, I think what you'll find is I like to send out just a bit of a brief, if you will, of the items that I'm going to talk about. So you generally get it the day of or the day before or whatever your committee meeting. And so you can see, and then I generally also add whatever standard in the superintendent evaluation process. There are several standards, and I always refer to whatever standard it is on my report and link it back to the DESE's evaluation rubric. So you won't see it this time, but next time we meet, Arlen and I have established, I just fill it in, a nice template that you'll get, and so it just kind of helps to keep track of everything that we've talked about or that I've brought forward. So I just want to put that on the table for next time. This time, what I really wanted to do, I'm not going to read it all, but just refer to the superintendent 90-day entry plan that I created. And you'll see that, I basically started it with a philosophical leadership overview from my perspective, the purpose of the plan, and then the immediate focus. And of course, the immediate focus is really to quickly learn and gain an understanding of the district, the individual communities' dynamics, and the interplay with them, the schools and the district. So that's really spearheading all of my work right now. And the superintendent vision, I put down that from my perspective, I think the overarching vision right now is to reaffirm a teaching and learning environment conducive for all, with children as a focus for all decisions. Underneath that, I basically put the days 1 to 30, 30 to 60, and 60 to 90. And I really started off with saying, okay, and I think Arlen did a really nice job of articulating. She said, it's almost like a checklist and you're going, check, 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 did that. And that's honestly what it is. So I can quickly go through at the end of my 30 days and say, did I meet with central office staff? Yes. Did I meet with, and you can just go through and say, yes, I did all of this. So right now, the days 1 to 30, for example, yes, I've met with the central office staff. We have another larger group meeting that we're going to be hosting here in the next week or two with everybody. Certainly I've met everyone and had individual meetings. Poor Robin, I think it's just like, I don't know, 5 times a day, but we might want to back that off a little bit at some point in time. But and Arlen is pretty regular too. So it's really been good as I think both Robin and I have continued to acclimate into the system. And I think one of our focus points right now is the Summer Institute for our administrative team. And so we're putting a lot of time, effort, and Keith Gawley has also been helping us with that as well. And I've been meeting with all of the principals to get some input from their perspective on where they see the greatest amount of support, I guess the greatest amount of support that they need from us, and how we can help to get them there and get ourselves there as central office. So we're taking a look at that. We're taking a look at establishing the parameters and roles and responsibility for the new leadership team members. For example, like how does Keith's work interplay with Robin's? How does Robin's work interplay with mine? Where does PPS fall into this? Where does Geo's work fall into this? So I mean, we're all kind of working this through and just making sure that we have clear guidelines that delineate what our roles and responsibilities are. The budget processes, Giovanna and I have only had very preliminary discussions on that to this point in time, but that will be one of the areas that I'll start to dig in shortly. The MSBA project, I've met a couple of times now on that, just getting acclimated to where the project's at. We've got a meeting tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to that. Of course, the strategic plan is huge, and I think that's huge for Robin and I. We really, Robin, correct me if you think I'm saying this inappropriately, but I think we see it as a foundational document right now to the work that we're doing. And I know you're going through right now, and we're kind of pulling out some of the key areas that we want to place as a focus for this year. And so you'll see us start to line that work up and our vision for how we can carry forward with the work and make sure that it is authentically carried out. So again, I'm not going to go through every item, but I would want you to know that we are working forward on this. And you'll notice that the very last bullet is look, listen, and learn on every one of these, because that's probably the most critical work that I'm doing right now. And, as I said to someone today, we met for about an hour and a half, and I said, it's really important for me that we don't rush through any of these meetings. And so that's been very, very helpful. So at your leisure, you can take a look at the days 31, 60, 61 to 90. I do think at the bottom, we start to look at core beliefs. What I loved about making application for NOSIT is that the very thing that is at the core of the center of your beliefs is the center of mine, and that is that every child matters. Arlene and I, and more Arlene than myself, are looking at putting that up as a kind of its own little logo inside of our entryway, so that, you know, within the next couple of weeks, as soon as you walk into the first door at central office, that will be there, that NOSIT believes that every child matters. So, so that's it for this particular plan. At this point in time, I think it's also fair to say that we're talking about staffing. You know that Carol Forgione, who's done a fabulous job with our HR, is leading us to take on a wonderful position for her. I'm thrilled for her, but it's a huge loss for us, a huge loss. So we have posted for the position and are getting in applications as we speak. So I'll keep you updated as that process starts to follow through too. And I think that's it for me at this point in time, unless you have any other questions. Happy to answer. And if I don't have the answer, I'll be sure to get it for you.
Thank you so much. Brooke, it's wonderful to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you. And just even the staff, like the staff has been amazing. It's just been a great start. So thank you so much, Martha. I appreciate that.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Brooke at this point? Okay. Our next piece of information is on the nurse leader position, and are you going to speak to that? I hope so.
Yes, I am. I absolutely am. So I'm sure that, and thank you, Martha, for turning that back to me. So you'll notice that there was a posting. I don't know if you've seen the posting or if you got a copy of it. Yes, Arlene shaking your head, yes. This is a really critical position from my perspective. And I really would love to see, as you were talking tonight about the Health and Wellness Committee and what that looks like, and the work that it does. I think there's also a place for your nurse leader to work with safety in the buildings and make sure that your plans are current, make sure even like we found in the past that sometimes even the books that are in the classrooms are so outdated. I mean, in terms of what our process is if you have an emergency. And so all of those things, I think, all need to fall under this particular role. I think it's a critical role for the district. I'm really excited to see somebody come on board with it. And I think that there's a lot of really good work that can be done to support our families and support our children. So I don't know if you had any questions of me regarding this position. So I think, Martha, that was just really it, to say that, yes, I believe firmly that this position is badly needed in the district, and I'm really excited to see us move in this direction.
Does anyone have any other questions or any questions at all? I do have one, and I'm sure if I look at this very carefully, somehow it will come up, but my heart is with the behavioral health task force, and especially around issues of addictive behaviors, but also other behavioral health concerns that may be troubling our kids or our families, and how we move forward to help people more. I'm wondering if there's anything in this job description that addresses specifically behavioral health rather than just physical health issues.
So that's a great point to bring up. I don't, to be honest with you, maybe that was one of those moments of assumptions, because I honestly would have assumed that that was part and parcel of work in this role. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it's specifically in here, but certainly I would agree 100% with your thinking, Martha, on that.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully she'll be part of our task force as well as the health and wellness task force. Yeah. It would be great. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, I keep moving my agenda to somewhere else. Okay. School committee meeting time. I think I do know now that at our June meeting, we did discuss the time that we're meeting, and at least one, maybe two people were wishing that we were meeting a little bit later in terms of work schedules and that kind of thing. And I don't know if anybody has any proposals or any suggestions about time, whether you prefer the 4:30 time, whether you like meeting later in the day. I'm guessing nobody wants to meet earlier because of work schedules, but I'm just opening the floor up for some discussion around that at this point. Some thoughts. Laura?
Later is better for me. Later than 4:30.
Okay. And do you have a time in mind?
5:30 would be better for me. But I don't want to speak for everybody. But I work until 5. I can take leave on occasion, but so it's not the end of the world, but it is a little better for me.
And how are other people feeling about 5:30? Liberty, that works for you? Jill?
Since I work part-time off the Cape, it works for me either way. I can plan ahead. I just know in the past, it's just information that, our administrators have a really long day, and they don't live in Wellfleet. They've got other places to go to. So, I just wonder if it works better for some school committee members to meet later, if our administrators at least can go to work a little later to balance out the day a bit. But anyway, it's just historical information. I know that it was because of our administrators also. We didn't want them to have a ridiculously long day. Just information, I can go either way.
That's helpful. Thank you. It would be good if our administrators could weigh in on that. Mary Beth and Brooke and Giovanna. And
I mean, I'm very flexible with my time. I'm typically there late anyway. I'm just thinking when I discussed earlier that PTA usually happens right after, that perhaps PTA happens prior to, maybe 4:30 to 5:30. So for me, I'm very flexible.
okay, Brooke?
I think for us, and I guess Giovanna, Robin, I defer to you too, but for us, the earlier time is probably the better time frame, quite honestly, but I'm very respectful of the fact that you don't want to take off work to have to come to this meeting, Laura. So I mean, I completely understand that, but I would also agree with Jill. I think the difference for us versus Mary Beth is that, our weeks have meetings almost every single night, right? So, I guess the thing that you don't want to get into either is that you're coming in late every morning and leaving late it's a very different cycle, because the work starts at 7 o'clock no matter what. So as much as you'd like to say, well, maybe we can, head in at 9 or 9:30 or pick a time 8, it just doesn't really work that way. So, but certainly, we would defer to our school committee, and whatever is convenient for you, we will be respectful of and we will abide by.
Okay.
Just have a question, Martha. Is this going to be on Zoom for the foreseeable future? Are these going to end up being back in person, or we don't know?
Brooke, do you know?
So that's such a good question, Liberty. And I would tell you right now, as I sit here, I don't have an answer. And the reason I think none of us have an answer right now is because the state has kind of gone down one road and then abruptly turned and went down another road. And so for any of us to predict right now, I think would be foolhardy, because like the masks is another situation, for example. Like, we've been told very clearly by the state that there's no decisions to be made right now until they give us direction in probably early August. So I think the same thing would hold true for these meetings, because I think at one point in time, there was talk that, well, they even sent out a memo at one point in time and said, no more Zoom meetings. And then within a week, all of a sudden, oh yes, we're all having Zoom meetings again. So I think it would be foolhardy for us to say anything until something concrete comes down. It's certainly the Zoom meetings. Now that everyone's used to it, I think, it's certainly convenient, I think, for everybody. And so I think that's really good. Flip side of it though is I would say there's still something missing when you're on a Zoom as opposed to in person. And sometimes it's just even the little things, like as you're leaving the building and you're talking and there's bonding, that just doesn't happen when you're on a Zoom, but it happens as you're walking from your meeting room out to the car or whatever. And so those little nuances, I think sometimes are missed on Zoom. But certainly at this point in time, and quite frankly, we still don't know what's ahead of us. I mean, I think we all think that we're going the right way and we're doing the right things, and we're going to start like a normal year. I mean, I think that's what we're all gunning for. That's what we all want. I don't know if that's where we're at, quite honestly. That's certainly what I want. I'm not sure if that's where we are. I think we need to play the summer out yet, quite frankly. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Well, we have a free-floating ideas here. I think in the sense of people, I don't think people should have to take leave from work to get to a meeting, especially a meeting that you're volunteering to do. It would be good if we could make it as reasonable as possible for Laura. Betsy, you have not weighed in. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm in a very similar predicament as Laura now, that my position has changed and my day ends in Yarmouth at 4:30. So if it's a Zoom, that's one thing, because I can sometimes awkwardly have that meeting in my office at another school district. But especially if we do move back in person, it would make it virtually impossible for me without asking to leave early, 12 times, over the year or whatever. So, or maybe 10 times. So I'd appreciate a later start if possible.
Okay, understood. Well, administration, I'm sorry. And I'm not even sure you get to vote. Do we take this up as a vote?
I don't think that you need to vote on it. I think you just need to come to consensus and then move forward with it.
All right.
And please don't feel badly for us. If this is our job, we get it.
That's why you make the big bucks, we know. Okay, is there anybody who has a problem on the school committee? Is that okay? 5:30. We will start meeting at 5:30. And Arlen, I really hope I remember this conversation. Please put it in the notes and write Martha and underline it. Okay, so starting at our next meeting, we will be meeting at 5:30, and I will do my very best to be an efficient chairperson and get the meetings finished by 7. It's my goal. And Lisa, I apologize. Would you like to speak to the school playground discussion?
Hi, sure.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you. I don't come with any answers. I definitely have more questions than answers, but I just want to be helpful and part of the discussion, and having the goal of just trying to get at least some more features for the playground before the 2024 date that we have earmarked right now for the capital budget. So, anything I can do to help, anything I can add to the discussion, I'm happy to do. I know that you guys have already had tons of previous discussions about this. So, I'm just trying to help set something in motion. I did speak with Wendy Farrell, who just did the Orleans Community Playground. And I think I had a very naive vision of what a community build would look like. It sounds like a full-time job, honestly, that takes years. And so I've really come to appreciate what I think I understood from Mary Beth, that she had kind of priced out having features installed. And again, I have more questions and answers, but I'm just kind of look at, could we fundraise to maybe get some of the features installed and then move forward with the more expensive items in 2024, or, really just to start the conversation or to kind of chime in on what you're already talking about.
Okay. Discussion on that, anybody? I am wondering about, I am personally very concerned that we have nothing for the kids to play on at this point, I don't think. And I honestly don't know how to move forward on that. And I wonder if the PTA would be a good place to begin to have conversations about fundraising. Anybody have any other ideas?
From what I understand from Wendy Farrell, she said, and that's one question I have, if the hardest part about fundraising, I guess, is the nonprofit piece, where if you have a nonprofit that you can kind of run the fundraising through, then that's the best way to do it. So I don't know if anybody knows if that's how our PTA is set up.
It must be, I assume it is. Betsy, would you know that? They do a lot of fundraising.
I'm trying to think about the status of, like, I think the change between PTO and PTA. Did we recategorize ourselves as a PTO? Was that something, Mary Beth?
Yes, they recategorized themselves as PTO. In one of their last sort of publications, it did say PTA, so I don't know if they reverted back. But as a PTO, I know they have more latitude in what they can do. So that might be a good starting point. I did purchase knowing that, the playground got bumped twice, so that if we break ground, it would be summer of 23. So I did purchase with end of year spending that was approved by school committee, more substantial toys, that type of thing to have out there for the students to play with. And I think fundraising is really the beginning step to see what is out there, what is available, what can we secure and recruit. And all the while, we had a small little team that was put together as a playground subcommittee from, a year and a half ago, and see if we can recruit more members to now go back and reissue those surveys to students and to parents and to community members to see, well, what kind of structures do you want? How much of it do you want to be a natural playscape? How much do you want it to be traditional playground equipment? And like Lisa said, based on what is able to be funded, we could purchase those things or start a slow build. So I think, the more people we have putting heads together to figure out what avenues to go to get this to happen sooner rather than later, I think is a real bonus for our kids.
Mm-hmm. So is that committee scheduled to meet this summer that you know of?
It was not, no. No, but I can certainly put it out there to see if that committee can meet. And then I can share it with Lisa so that she can get the word out to see if more people would like to meet, and then we could share that Zoom link unless we meet in person.
I just have a question. You all probably know more than I do about this, but in terms of fundraising, what about like grants, like the NFL Play 50? I know they fund playgrounds. Is there somebody that's looked into like grants and grant writing kind of going?
That would be absolutely. The community preservation grant is the big one that typically funds playgrounds. I think you have to be careful when you go to an organization like the NFL, because then you're advertising.
Oh, geez, yeah.
What do they have a role? Oh, Betsy, sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm just wondering about ESSER funding, because I think a lot of that can be tied to social emotional wellness for kids, especially after the pandemic. And I don't know if there's anything available that might be, the way Lisa described it, is there a way for us to put something in place, maybe not the giant project, but to get some features? I mean, I guess that would take a larger, you would want to know what design you were going to do. And that way, when you implemented pieces separately, but I know that I was invited to something recently. It was a preschool, admittedly, but it was like an outside mud kitchen, and the kids were having a blast. And so I know we had looked for a more natural kind of thing. I'm not suggesting that kindergarten through 5th grade have a mud kitchen to play with. That would probably be too much, but something of that sort, if that was the will of the committee. But back to my original point, ESSER funding.
Jill?
I think it would be helpful too if minutes for playground discussion are secured, because we had a lot of lengthy, ideas of other stakeholders, or, collaboration with perhaps Tech Folk schools, AmeriCorps. So we did, as a committee, kick around a lot of good ideas. And then also that playground subcommittee was established. So I think it would be helpful too to review some of the minutes of ideas we've had in the past. There's a lot of creative problem solving we can do.
So what do we do when somebody who's not a committee member wishes to speak, Betsy? Arizona wants to say something.
I don't know. Let's ask our new superintendent.
Okay, Brooke.
So you're not going to like the answer I'm going to give you. So I would put that on the table right away. Normally you don't acknowledge it. It's not good practice to get into, because then it's really opening up. And I think it's always really important to remember that these are business meetings held in public. These are not public meetings. These are business meetings by your school committee specifically to conduct business. So she probably she can certainly submit her comments or questions to any one of you via email, or of course call, or what have you, or present during public citizen comment. But as a rule of thumb, you generally shouldn't open it up, because you're setting precedent. So probably not the answer you're looking for, but my opinion.
And thank you. I just want to add into that, just for clarification, that Lisa Holmes did email me as the chair and asked to be put on. We worked out that she would be put on the agenda, so that is why she began with her quote unquote presentation or her questions. And so then the discussion through us ensues, and I will agree with Brooke. I believe that's probably protocol. And so ways that then other people, stakeholders can be involved would be through the committee, or certainly writing to a committee member who would then not converse directly back with the person, but bring that input either to the principal for use on the committee, or if we at another time had another agenda item on the playground, we could then beat it at the meeting. So but not to violate the open meeting laws.
That makes sense. And Arizona, there is a time at the beginning of every school committee meeting for citizens to speak, and that would have been a perfect time for you to talk to us. But in the meantime, feel free to get in touch with any of us with your questions or your comments, or even to Lisa, who suddenly finds herself in charge. Mary Beth.
So I propose that I reach out to the original members of the subcommittee. They included Claudia Crozin, Laura Hanson, Ariana Bradford, Beth Forster, and myself. And then I can share, if we can find a mutually agreed upon time to meet. and share that information not only with the committee, but with Lisa, who can then share it with who might be interested in becoming part of that committee as well, or supporting that committee. And we can just meet and, I can bring all the documentation that I had when we went through this whole process in the playground forum and see what we can get started, what grants we can apply for, what fundraising will be available, and also to share it too with PTA or PTO, find out which designation they are.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that I normally have a very noisy puppy too, so I totally get this. I guess a quick question, because this is, again, it's all new ground for me, but I'm curious to know, and I think Mary Beth, we may have talked briefly about this, but when did you start the process of reviewing this and deciding that you needed to do this? Because it sounds like it's been over a year. Well, and COVID was such a bizarre time for us to live through. So probably a lot of stuff didn't get done that normally would have gotten done. And Betsy, I don't want to lose sight of your question about the ESSER money. I'm not sure whether that's something that we can legitimately do or not, but Giovanna and I can look into that and see if there's something there that could be equitably distributed, because it wouldn't just whatever you do for the one and the ratios and everything else. So there'd have to be some work. So I wouldn't want to ask Giovanna on the spot tonight, because I think that there would have to be some homework done on that. And the answer may be a clear yes, or it may be a clear no, quite frankly. But Mary Beth, just quickly,
Sure.
time frame on this. Just
Sure. So Nancy White, who was our playground inspector, she came out in August, 2 August ago. So that was 19. And we got her report near the end of October. And that's when she wanted a couple of pieces to be removed because of age and wear and tear. So a letter went home to families as well as to school committee and staff that this is what's happening. So our plan was to have the playground replaced beginning that following summer. And so that's when we put together the playground forum and everything that had taken place. I think it was March 5th of that year. And prior to, we were doing all of these surveys. So we had all that data. And so the subcommittee was formed that evening. We were set up for about 40, 60 people. I forget how many tables we had set up, but we were the only 5 that came. And so we had our next meeting scheduled for April, but of course we went into lockdown by then. So it just sat idle. And in the meantime is when we discovered from the fire chief that we absolutely positively needed to install a fire suppression system. So that was at an estimate of 1.2 million. And then when the bids came in, they were about, Giovanna could be more precise than I can. I want to say like $500,000 over what we had projected. So in the meantime, our exterior cladding and trim work, we were going to break that up into 2 sections, so over 2-year period of time. And so the head custodian had come back to me and said, the exterior of the building is in really rough shape, that needs to be priority before the playground as well. And no longer could it be split over 2 years. It needed to all be done at the same time. So it went fire suppression system at 1.2 million, then it went exterior cladding and trim for 600,000, and then the new playground for about 350,000.
Okay, I'm happy to have some further dialogue offline, because I just have some other clarifying questions. But thank you very much. That was.
And my fear too was that there wouldn't be anything for kids to do. So one of my first questions, because I met with Nancy a couple of times after, the more questions that started to percolate.
Yeah.
And one was, are elementary schools, public schools required to have playground structures? And she said, no, you can have toys. So I would suggest that you get quality toys. Well, we couldn't get toys because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So with end of year spending, the school committee did approve that we could spend about $2,000. So I got more quality toys to be out there and sort of more, they don't have to be taken in after every class and that type of thing. And they also said to consult with OT and PT to make sure whatever you do put out there, that it's accessible to all children.
There's a lot that goes into it. There really is a lot. So I'm certainly not being critical of anything, whether it's time frame or process or whatnot. But there's a piece of me, like probably everyone on this screen, that says, those children are coming back, and it would really be nice to have something. And I think Mary Beth, it was you that said, even if we start and can build upon it,
Exactly.
and that would send a message that honestly something is happening here. So happy to have dialogue off screen. Thank you.
Mary Beth, I think it would be wonderful if you could convene that group. I think
Absolutely.
that's the best way to start at this point. And I know you'll keep us posted, and I know
Absolutely.
you all, that's quite a group you've got there with you leading it. It'll be great.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the bus parking update. It was reported to me that there were buses from Cape Destinations parking at our parking lot on a Saturday recently. I've been by on weekdays and haven't seen any, but on the weekends I did see a few as well. Buses parking in the parking spaces across from the school, that back up onto the field, and also a couple of buses in our parking lot to the right of the building as you face the building. Most of them were Cape Destination school buses. I believe there were 3 or 4 of them, and then one big, big expensive tour bus kind of thing. And I guess what those buses are doing is ferrying people to Cahoon Hollow, to the restaurant there. So I, with Betsy's approval, got in touch with Suzanne Thomas, who said that in fact it is an issue that perhaps the police could take care of, that we need to have signage there saying that this was not for bus property, no parking, whatever the signs say, I don't remember. And I do remember that in fact we ended up going through this whole thing last year. We did want to talk about whether or not we should attempt, now that the COVID emergency seems to be perhaps resolving. Do we now want to revisit the bus contract situation so we could raise some money perhaps for playground equipment? At this point, it's kind of late for the summer, but we were planning originally to talk about it at, I believe, at this meeting for next summer. The police, I did have a conversation with Geraldine LaPence from the police department, and she said we do in fact have to get signs up there, and I believe we would have to go through the DPW to get signs put there, but I didn't want to do that without speaking to everybody in the committee and ask you how you felt about this kind of thing. What do you think we should do at this point? They're parking there for free right now. And I don't know if there were an accident, whether or not we'd be liable, especially if we don't have signs up there telling them not to park. Betsy, did you want to?
If you're done, sorry, I was kind of with pencil, so I can wait till you're done.
I'm done.
Okay, so just one other thing that we need to consider is one of the reasons we were entering or thinking of entering into a contract with the town was so that we could support the town in a problem they were having, which was these buses were parking at other places that were not, much worse, I guess. So Suzanne had come to us not COVID year, but the year before, and we had gotten quite far in the process of getting a contract and signing a contract with the bus companies. And then with COVID happened, this committee decided that we did not want to advocate for more people being close together. So that is why we decided not to have buses sign the contract with them that year. But it really was in a community spirit working with the town. And so I think I would just advocate for a conversation, because it may not be a nice relationship with the town if now they have to come control our lot, and look, because there's signs up and now they have to write tickets. That might give, I don't know. So I'm just saying maybe we need to do a little bit more asking about what would be helpful for the town, and maybe what is the liability for us in our school building. And, if we just kind of let it slide this year with Cape Destinations, then maybe we're in a good place to negotiate with them next year, instead of slapping a bunch of tickets on them this year and then saying, hey, want a contract the following year. So I just want us to kind of put the big context back in it for why we were getting involved in this. Yes, it would that one of the lovely outcomes was going to be that we would get some additional funding, but that wasn't the reason we were doing it. The goal was to really be able to become partnerships with the town.
Mhm. Understood. Anybody else have any thoughts about that? So are you suggesting that we just leave it, Betsy, and sort of close our eyes to it and hope nothing happens, or that I can certainly try to get in touch with somebody at town hall?
I liked your idea of talking to the police department.
I
think
did.
Oh, you did. And so were they fine with putting up signs and
That's what they suggested, actually.
oh, okay.
Because then they could keep an eye on it. What Officer LePence said to me was that they would keep an eye on it, but they can't say anything to anybody if there are no signs. They talk about ticketing people. She just thought they could ask people to leave. It wasn't that kind of thing. But without signs, they have no right to say anything. It's town property.
Right. So I guess that's the conversation. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe that's just my perspective that, I would like to be a good neighbor to Cape Destinations, so that next year we can maybe procure something a little bit more advantageous for us. But I'm open for it. I'm not married to my own ideas. So I think that the discussion would center around next steps for you, in terms of talking to the town. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Anyone else?
I just have a question about the liability. So is it more of a liability if we have a contract with Cape Destinations, or we don't know that yet? So if we're charging them, would that make that, potentially worse if there was an accident or something there?
I believe, and Jill and Betsy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that there was language in the contract about liability, because that was something we were concerned about. But right now we don't have a contract. So that's what worries me. And without signs there.
And we wouldn't be able to just have them sign a contract soon. It's got to wait till next year.
I don't know if we could we'd have to, I don't know. I guess we'd have to do it through.
Martha, if I may, I believe that the bus company also had to have that on their insurance, that the town of Wellfleet and Wellfleet Elementary School would not be liable. So it wasn't just our contract, their contract had to have that, or their insurance had to have that as well. I don't think you can get that done now.
I'm sorry about my dog. I don't know where my family has gone. Betsy.
So I did, when I did run into Suzanne, I did ask her about when it would be a good time to restart the conversation, and she suggested that we put it on our agenda for September, October, just to start talking. So I'm just not sure where the contract is. I'm sure we'd have to have another meeting to really go over it and vote on it, because I'm not sure we ever did finalize it. I think we still had some questions. So I'm not sure we could do it this year.
I agree. I think the summers will be half over or more by the time we are able to do that. Should I have another conversation with the police department, and then if they say, they would just give a verbal warning, you can't park here, how does that feel to people? Does that feel friendlier? Or Betsy, does that still make us not good neighbors?
I'm wondering about, though, the issue of liability. So who would that conversation happen with? And then that start?
It would probably be somebody in town hall, probably the town administrator. So I could certainly give that person a call. And I'm not sure we're allowed to go into town hall without an appointment. So I think I would probably just try to reach that person, Jill.
The town does have a town council, so I think maybe it would be advantageous to do that.
Yeah, but we have to do that through the administrator.
Yeah.
We can't just call them. So that's what I would do. Yeah. Does that make sense to people that I call the town administrator and have a conversation about how we can proceed, that we want to be good neighbors, but we are concerned about liability. I think that's a really important question, Liberty. If the buses are parking there, Brooke?
I would strongly support that's the starting point, because you're really it's a valid concern. And I certainly understand the wanting to be a good neighbor. I absolutely do. And I think that there's a way to toggle this to make sure that you can do both. But I do think that the town, because the town owns the building, right? So, it probably behooves them as much as anybody linked to the school district to make sure that they're covered. So I really think that the onus is probably more on them. I'm just putting that out there for food for thought.
Thank you. Does that feel okay to everybody? I will get in touch with the TA this week, hopefully tomorrow. And find out about liability. And if we are liable, then we absolutely have to put signs up and have the police tell them they can't be there. And if not, close our eyes and let them park there. I'm assuming we are liable if anything happened.
Well, we need the information, so I say let's move on to the next agenda item. We just need the information. We could keep speculating, but it's a good plan, for you to contact.
I agree, Jill, but the issue is I need to know what to do next, because we're not meeting.
Right, but to get so checking with town hall and asking, for legal counsel. And then from there,
Right. And so my question to the group, to the committee, is if it turns out that the town is liable, do I then ask, do you want me to ask the DPW? Is that who puts up the signs, Mary Beth? Yeah, get in touch with the DPW. Or ask Mary.
He creates them. Jay Norton?
Yeah. Get in touch with Jay and ask him to put the signs up.
It may be that after you talk to town council that they take on the issue, because it's a town issue then, right? You might, you might not have to do anything else.
That would be nice. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. And now, Jill, on to our next agenda item. And I'm guessing that's Giovanna.
Thank you. All right, then let's go directly to the last page of the expenditure report, page 6. The prior month balance was $110,461. We spent or encumbered $110,334, leaving a balance of $127. The amount encumbered, the $272,133, is comprised of payroll and purchase orders. The payroll totals $184,915. The purchase orders for encumbrances that were incurred in fiscal 21 totals $87,218. Principal Rodman followed the spend down plan as presented to the school committee at the last meeting. We did have some savings in various line items that enabled her to make the spend down plan and purchase of technology. We had savings in the tuition to the collaborative. We also had savings in the after school care program, which was shuttered as a result of COVID. We had savings in the utility line items in fuel, as well as the electrical and phone. We also had savings in the transportation line item, the regular day transportation, as well as the special education out of district transportation. We had savings in the salaries line item for the cafeterias. And we had savings in various line items of materials and supplies that were not purchased, as well as the substitute line items as a result of the COVID. We didn't expend all of the funds earmarked for substitutes. There was some savings in the secretary line item, as well as in the special education salaries, medical therapeutic. We also had E-rate funds that allowed us to make purchases of the new interactive boards. The amount that we received was about $9,000 from E-rate, and that was put back into the budget that allowed for those purchases. Any questions on the FY21 final budget?
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giovanna. Okay, and now I think we're talking about the disposal and donation of outdated curriculum materials. Is that you, Mary Beth?
Yes, it's just very simple. We do have a storage area, and David Samuels, our new head custodian, he had made the request that it's really overcrowded in that space. And there are materials from, many, many teachers ago who had retired. And so we wanted to do a thoughtful process of either donating or disposing properly of things that just are no longer appropriate or provide rigor for students. So David had said that, he was trying to reorganize it, and it's in pretty good shape organization-wise in terms of grade level. But he said it's now overspilling onto the floor, and you just can't really maneuver in there. So I know that OES has just gone through this process, and so I know they have a vendor that would come out to the building to do that. So I'm just asking for approval to be able to start moving some of that older material that will most likely not be used again.
If you need a motion, I move that.
Second, anyone?
I'll second.
Thank you, Liberty. Okay,
Thank you so much.
all right. All those in favor? All right, great. Okay, on to reports, and Jill, you're on with the collaborative.
There was a meeting on June 9th, and just briefly to sum up a 3-hour meeting, we did our approval on many policy handbooks. So included in the policy handbooks was the Waypoint Student Code of Conduct. Waypoint is the alternative high school for people who don't know. Parent student Waypoint handbook, employee handbook, Cape Cod collaborative transportation, healthcare manual, And there are a few others. There are some towns that lost their votes because they haven't had a representative in over 2 meetings. So that included Wareham, Nantucket, Truro, Provincetown, Falmouth, and Nauset. We reorganized, and wonderful Judy Lindahl is our chair of the collaborative. The STAR program, which deals with the younger children, and Waypoint Academy, which deals with the older academy. There's no surprise, many people who are adding on to the basic enrollment for the fall. Plymouth School Committee has asked to be a member of the collaborative. So there's some rules and regulations where they aren't part of the CAPE, but they will be having something called an adjunct membership because they're paying full tuition. And they have students in Waypoint, as well as they take advantage of a lot of professional development offered. There's a lot more, but that's good for now. I'll catch up with a few other points another time.
Thank you, Jill.
You're welcome.
I think we're getting hungry, I can tell. Okay, preschool enrollment, I guess, is not something we need to do this month. I'm assuming, is that true? Because there's no school. All right. And did we have a PTA meeting or anything? No. Behavioral health task force met in May, and I believe I reported on that. And school council also met in May, and I believe I reported on that, and Mary Beth did as well on her report. And the Housing Task Force Committee member, Jan, is no longer. Do we need to appoint another one? She said she'd be happy to stay on it, but in terms of having someone from the school committee, do we need another person on it?
I don't believe we do. Jan has been so involved with this, and she seemed to be happy to share information with us. And since she's right there at the source, I think we let it be.
Great, great. Keep it simple. Any future agenda items for September so far? I have an introduction for people to get to know each other a little better, and a decision on which members will be going to the conference in Hyannis in November. And we're allowed 2 people, is that right? Okay. And can we share?
Yes.
I thought so. Okay, so we can share days. So if we can agree one person go one day, another person go another, if there are more than 2 people who would like to go. Any other agenda items that you would like to see us put on the agenda for September? Brooke?
I would also encourage that either September or October that Robin comes forward with a presentation and can talk about the work that we're doing, because I think it'll lay out a nice map of the work that we see moving forward. So Robin and I had talked about it, and I just think either late September or early October would be really good for her to come forward.
Okay. I believe our next scheduled meeting is on the 2nd Tuesday in September. If that's too soon, we can do it in October. We'll figure that out by then. We have all the time in the world.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Laura.
I mean, should we put the playground on it again, or are we just waiting?
I bet Mary Beth will have something to tell us by then, by September.
I could include it in principal's report.
Okay.
I'm just starting to pen an email now to the original subcommittee to see if we could meet.
Great, great. And if it turns out that there's something that we need to act on, just let me know. Okay. Then anything else? I did want to talk, we did have a conversation, and again, this is my memory. I will be so much better at taking notes and paying attention now. We did have a conversation about anti-racism and the policy, whether or not there's a policy, a school policy. I do know that we also had a conversation about how much information we want on the website in terms of reaching us as members. And I believe the policy committee is taking that up. Betsy. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for reminding us, Martha. Now that we are reorganized and all the committees now are reorganized, Arlen will be sending out the survey. And then we'll go for there, and that would be on school committee communication and how we want to take that up.
Great, thank you.
The racism group or policy or whatever, I believe was going to start at the central office level, and then they were going to trickle it down to us, and we were waiting for Brooke to come on board. So my notes tell me that Brooke was going to get it started when she came on board, that Keith has some historical information on what's been done, and once they conferred, then it would trickle down to each committee.
Great, okay, thank you. So we don't need those. Great. Anything, Brooke? Yes.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Betsy. And I think that we see that as part of our work. Robin and I have already had some preliminary discussions on this as well. And as we look at being thoughtful and rolling something out. So I don't know that we'll have a lot on that specific topic in September necessarily. I could see more likely October, because right now our work really is focused on the strategic plan and making sure that we've got a solid way forward with that. But I would want to assure you that we are also having conversation on all of the other topics as well.
Thank you. We'll look forward to that. Thanks. I think we are reaching the end. Betsy, oh, we do need to have approval of minutes from June 8th.
So moved. Jill.
All in favor? Okay. And payment.
Can I just interrupt? It just looks like Laura wants to ask a question. Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was
That's
looking
okay.
at Liberty and thinking she really doesn't vote for that because she wasn't at the meeting, but thank you. Okay.
I know. I just wanted to double check. There is no August meeting. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Payment of bills, Betsy?
Paid.
Great. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Jill, so moved.
Second.
Great. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful August and hi, Katie. Have a wonderful rest of the summer, and call me if you need me. And I guess, Brooke, we'll get together at some point to discuss the next agenda.
And we'll look forward to that.
Me too. Okay.
Congratulations. And Betsy, thank you so much for your service too in the role.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
still
Martha,
in
you
this
did great.
together.
You
We're
did so good, Martha. You got this.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you. You
Good
too.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.